Good evening. My name is Brooke Pear. I'm the Financial Aid Counselor for Pinellas County School Districts. Tonight I'll be talking to you along with my colleagues Erin Dunn and Michelle Coffers about reviewing your financial aid award letters. You may have tuned in to some of our other FAFSA Facebook Live events where we cover the basics of the FAFSA and one that covered what to do right after you've completed. This is our final FAFSA Live event, and this, like I said, will cover what you need to know and what to review your financial aid letters and make the appropriate choices. I want everyone to know that this session is being recorded, and the materials will be available on our website at www.pcsb.org/FAFSA. Before we begin, I do want Erin and Michelle to introduce themselves. Erin, do you want to start?
Hi, my name is Erin Dunn. I am Campus Director of Financial Aid at the University of South Florida, St. Petersburg.
Great. Thanks, Erin. Now to you, Michelle.
Hi, good evening. My name is Michelle Coffers, and I am a school counselor at Palm Harbor University High School, working with the Center for Wellness and Medical Profession students.
Thanks. Thanks both for joining me tonight. Our goal for this presentation is to provide our PCS seniors and their families with the necessary tools and information so that they are able to confidently review and understand the financial aid offers. For tonight's presentation, we are going to do a brief presentation and then we're going to cover your questions. You can submit your questions to the chat box and we will answer them either live or in the chat box. So let's get started. So comparing financial aid offers. When you get your award letter, you will find that each award letter has some basic components, although they all will be a little different from each other. You will typically get your award letter around the same time or shortly after you've been given your acceptance letter, but it can vary, so you do want to check with your school. One thing to keep in mind is that there is no standard award letter format, so they can look different from each other. In general, they typically include the cost of attendance, grants if you are eligible to receive, scholarships if you're receiving any, loans, work study, and the estimated family contribution. As long as you complete your FAFSA each year, you will receive an award letter each year. So we're next going to go over, just to give you an idea of what you're looking at, what a sample award letter could look like. Now keep in mind, this is just to give you an idea. I know it's probably hard for you to see the details, but it goes over those basic areas that I just covered. And we will now go over in a little more detail covering the different components. So we'll start with the cost of attendance. Hopefully your award letters will include the cost of attendance, which lets you know how much one full year of school will cost. Typically, it would include tuition, room and board, fees, books, transportation, and personal expenses. If it isn't listed, be sure to check the school's website for the cost of attendance or a net price calculator, because that is one thing when we get to comparing that you really need to have a look at. So one component are grants. If you're eligible for grants, you should see these listed. These are the gift aid or free money that you receive. It's based on your financial need. There are both state and federal grants, the most well-known one being the Pell Grant, which is given to students with the most exceptional financial need. Next, you may see scholarships. Scholarships, examples are like the Bright Future Scholarship, which is a state scholarship, but the school may also offer institutional scholarships. It is important to know if these are renewable or just a one-time offer. If renewable, be sure to check what you need to do to maintain your award. I am now going to turn things over to Michelle, who's going to cover the remaining items you're likely to see on your award letter.
So the next item that you will see indicated on your award letter will be for loans. Loans are federal-based, and it is money that the government is offering you on a loan, meaning that this money has to be paid back with interest. The loan amount that you were offered in your award letter may be more than you actually need. You do not have to accept the money that is being available to you. It is important to note that there are two types of loans that are available to our students. The first type of loan is going to be a subsidized loan, and this is based on your family's financial need. If you need to repay these loans, but the government will pay the interest while you're in school, at least half of the time or up to 6 months after you graduate. The second type of loan is called unsubsidized, which means that it is not based on need. You do have to pay back this loan with any interest that accrues while you are in school and during your grace and repayment periods. Students that are offered subsidized loans should choose those over unsubsidized loans when possible. The next indicator that you may see on your list is an option for a work study. Work study allows you to earn money while you are in college. This money does not directly apply to your tuition. You'll receive payment in the form of a paycheck, just like you would any other job. Work-study jobs are not guaranteed. You do have to apply and be hired for those positions. Also, the amount that you see listed on your work-study is not guaranteed. This number will represent the maximum amount that you're able to receive through the work-study, and your individual payment will be dependent on the job that you're hired for. They do have both federal work-study programs, and you can also look at working at the college that you're attending. To break down some of the terminology that you'll see on your letter, the first one is your expected family contribution, also known as the EFC. This is how much your family is expected to contribute to your education and is used by schools to determine your financial aid. As Ms. Pear indicated earlier, your EFC is calculated by completing your FAFSA. This is the federal application for student aid and is to be done each school year. Your EFC is taken into account your parents' income, any assets that you may have in your family, and also the number of kids attending college. In general terms, the lower that your EFC is calculated equals the higher amount of financial aid that your family will qualify for each year. So looking at calculating your cost of attendance and how much that your family will be asked to pay. This equation is used for each school to see how much you will have to pay out of pocket. Out-of-pocket costs is the difference between the cost of attending the school and the gift aid components of the financial aid package, such as your grants, scholarships, and your work study. This will exclude, though, any loans that are included in the financial aid package. Your out-of-cost pocket is to help you measure just how much the college is really going to cost you. It will tell you how much money you will spend from your savings, your current income, or future income to pay for college. And again, this may include things such as your room and board, tuition, meal plans, even including your gas money or a plane ticket home to visit over the holidays.
Thanks, Michelle. Before we get to answering some common questions, Erin is going to go over some important items you need to consider when reviewing your letter so that you can carefully compare offers as well as some important final steps you need to take.
Thank you. Well, I want to go over a few different things, including the differences in definitions for cost of attendance from various schools, front loading of grants, which happens in several different types of institutions, and then the gapping and packaging of non-need-based aid. So this is kind of the gap between what money is provided by the school and the gap in your educational expenses. So first of all, starting out with differences in the cost of attendance definition. You need to take a look at each school you're interested in because some colleges may not actually provide the cost of attendance on your award letter. But every school is required by federal law to provide a cost of attendance. Now keep in mind, as mentioned, these are estimated costs. And the school provides those estimated costs, so you have an idea of what costs would be to actually attend there. But it may vary based on your individual situation. So when you look either on the web page or on the award letter, be sure that the cost of attendance is including the different parts or different components of your expenses to go to that particular school. So you're looking to see if it includes tuition and fees, room and board, that's your housing and meal plans, books and supplies, and transportation and personal expenses. So if it does not include any of those components, then you need to kind of estimate what it would cost you for those individual components and add that in when you're determining your cost of attendance at that particular school and comparing offers. So the next thing I'd like to talk about is also the front loading of grants. There are some schools that you may be provided an award letter where they will provide the largest amount of grant money to you as a freshman. But as you progress into sophomore, junior, and senior, it may reduce over those different years. So it's really important to ask a few questions to know when you have received a grant, if you're going to expect to receive the same amount in subsequent years, or if that is something that's going to be a lot in the first year and not so much in later years. Also, you need to find out whether those are renewable. And sometimes that may be a question of your GPA, that you have to maintain a certain GPA. It may be a question of a school's priority date. So you also need to find out whether they rely on renewability based on you applying for the FAFSA by a certain date. So that kind of ties into, if they are renewable grants, what are the requirements then to renew? And you need to check with the school and find out precisely what each grant's requirements are for renewal each year. Now, finally, I want to go over the gap. And this is where you may be offered a few grants and then you have kind of a gap in the remainder. Now, financial aid, the premise of that is to provide you assistance in going to school, as you know. But it doesn't mean that you will get a full package necessarily of free money. So you may be offered some of the non-need-based money that Michelle mentioned. So the gapping is literally when colleges do not meet the demonstrated financial need of a student. So there's a gap between the need and the actual offer that school has provided to you. Now, to mask this gap, that's where the school will add in some non-need-based types of money. That generally includes unsubsidized student loans. It also may include a PLUS loan for parents. Now, a PLUS loan literally translates to a parent loan for undergraduate students. It's a supplemental loan that parents can apply for to help offset those additional costs. And then there's always private student loans. That's kind of the last opportunity for you to get some additional financing to help you go to school. But it's always a last choice. Now, if non-need-based aid is listed, remember that these are available to everyone. So I often in my job, I will have certain families that say, well, I make too much money, I won't qualify for financial aid. That's not quite true. You may qualify, you may not get the grants or that need-based money, but you may qualify for some unsubsidized loan money or Parent Plus loans. So that's an option for you. Now, remember that your award letter is, if it is less than what you expected, you can try to talk to the financial aid office and see if there's anything that you can do. Some schools, they provide you hard and fast what your financial aid award letter will be, and there's no negotiation, but some, there may be some wiggle room with that. Now, there's also the opportunity to appeal, and this is where, say, for instance, your financial situation has changed. So the FAFSA is not accurately reflecting your current financial situation. In that case, that's considered an appeal. And you can talk to the financial aid office and find out, hey, look, you know, I wasn't offered any free money or any of the need-based money, But we've had a change in our family situation, and you can discuss it with the financial aid office. That may result in you being able to receive some of the need-based types of money. That is called a professional judgment on the behalf of the school. Now, you're not obligated to accept all parts of your financial aid package. A lot of times, some folks, if they are offered loans up front, they don't want to take the loans. That's okay. There are extra steps that are involved in order for a student to actually accept loans. But generally, grants and scholarships are automatically accepted or just require you to submit some kind of acknowledgement to the school that you understand the rules of getting that particular type of money. Okay, so when it comes to offer deadlines, make sure you look at your award letter to see if there are any directions on there about accepting or declining your money. Some schools actually send you to their website. Some schools may send you an email with directions. But look at your award letter and see if it provides those kind of instructions on what your next steps are going to be. And that really is particularly important if there are deadlines for you to accept, particularly that free money, by a certain deadline. So make sure you understand what those deadlines are, mark them on your calendar so you don't miss something and miss out on a particular type of money. Now, as I mentioned, loans and grants may require additional steps. Often there are terms and conditions that are the requirements for getting that particular type of money, so it's good to complete those. And loans, like I said, they require extra steps as well. So it is not just a matter of saying, yes, I want the loans, but there are additional requirements so that the student understands that this is a loan and must be repaid. So the last thing is to mark your calendars. So it is an annual application. Your FAFSA, it opens up every year on October 1st. This is where you need to check with the schools that you're interested in to see if they have a priority date for submitting your FAFSA application. That may also be a criteria to receive some of that additional free or gift aid that we were talking about. So find out from that school what their priority date and apply for the FAFSA between October 1st and their priority date. Now, also keep looking for free money. It's not just at the school. Often I will find that students who receive maybe an admission scholarship don't even bother to look elsewhere. There are a lot of opportunities for you, and scholarships are not just for the freshman year. You can apply in many different places, not only at the school, but you can check with the different departments within the school or in the financial aid office and check in outside sources, which Brooke can tell you a little bit more about. So next, I will turn it back over to Brooke.
Thanks, Erin. I do know there's a lot of information that we're covering, so I do want to remind you that we are recording this session, and the materials will be available on our website, pcsb.org/FAFSA. We've got that on our website right now. You can see various places that are available to get help listed here. These are all on our FAFSA website. USF also, we've just added them as well because they are also a place that you can go contact them, and they will also assist you with this process. If you have questions, again, please enter them into the chat and we will get to answering those. We do have some already that we're going to get started with. So, what is the deadline to accept a financial aid award package? Erin, do you want to?
It depends on the school. So the idea is generally when you are first starting into the school, you'll receive your admissions acceptance letter. And then generally around the same time, you'll also receive a financial aid award notice. It's a good idea to go ahead and acknowledge that and complete anything that is needed for the financial aid office so that you can secure that financial aid award notice or award offer before you start your first day of school, so you know what your financial situation will be.
When and how do I receive my financial aid? Michelle, do you want to?
Sure. So the ways that you're going to receive your financial aid will vary, I think, dependent on the school again. Some schools will send an actual letter home, so it's important to keep an eye on your post office and the mail coming in, as they may send a hard copy letter home to you with your financial aid. A lot of schools now are switching over to the digital platform, where when you're on your application, say for example, Florida State, when you log on your application for Florida State where you saw your admissions decision, more than likely they will also have your financial aid information listed on there for you to review.
Great. And I think that's an important thing to keep in mind is you do need to check with the schools and find out how they're communicating this, so that you don't, if a lot of times it is a portal or something, and I think, Aaron, I'm sure you could speak to that. There's a lot of students that miss deadlines because they're not checking on this on a regular basis.
Right. And I will say that in my experience with most admissions offices, that they provide the student information on how to access their student information system. So it will vary, like we said, by school, but make sure that you're logging into that when you're given that information so that you don't miss out on those deadlines.
And Brooke, something that I recommend to my students also is to do a spreadsheet, when you're tracking colleges that you're applying to. Also, continue that on to track the financial aid information you've gotten back, and more specifically, the deadlines. If you have a running list in one place to verify that, it's, I think, easier to keep track of everything and not miss a deadline if you kind of have a running tally or a place to check that information.
Great suggestion.
And I will add on just a little extra on that too. Besides the financial aid, the scholarships as well.
Absolutely.
Because there may be different deadlines, and this is often not understood, that there may be different deadlines with different scholarships within the institution. So the financial aid as a whole, as we've explained, it's kind of an umbrella term, and scholarships are part of that. But a lot of times, some scholarships that are in the institution require an additional application, and they may have different deadlines. And so you need to also, in that spreadsheet, it's an excellent suggestion, that besides having the financial aid deadlines and when to turn in documents and notices for financial aid, but also scholarships and what may be necessary to submit by a certain deadline for scholarships as well.
Both great suggestions. Okay, if I compare my financial aid offers, how do I know which one is best? The one that offers the most money? Anybody?
Yeah, I think that's a tough question. I don't think that necessarily the one that offers you the most money is the best decision or the best place. I think that it's something to take into consideration when you're making the decision of where to attend school. How much money are they offering? Really, is how much money is it going to cost out of pocket to you and your family? And then are you guys okay with that amount that you're going to have to pay to match, the school that you want to go to? I think that it's something to definitely take into consideration. Personally, I don't think it should be your sole decision on where to attend college, but I think, long-term financial stability and what you're taking on is a huge thing that needs to be factored into that final decision.
And I agree with that 100%. And I think that a good way of thinking of this, because we've thrown a lot of acronyms and terminology at you, if you think of a comparison even between School A and School B, remember that estimated family contribution number that you get from the FAFSA? That doesn't change for School A or for School B. What changes is the cost of attendance from School A to School B. So when you're looking at comparisons, it's going to be pretty standard on what the federal government may be able to provide you. Where the difference comes in is the costs that are related to that specific school. So a larger award package looks fabulous, but if you have much higher expenses, you have to take that into account. So how much of the money, the extra money you may be offered, how far is that actually going towards those expenses? So make a really educated decision based on, not on the total awards you've been offered, but also on the costs at that particular school in comparison to the awards you've been offered.
Great. And I also think, kind of going back to your slides about the masking, is you want to, so just don't look and go, oh, this has a bigger award letter. Double check and make sure, are they including any of those non-need-based items like your unsubsidized loan in that? Because again, I do want to emphasize that the award letters are going to look different from each school. So it's not going to be as obvious. And as Michelle suggested, the spreadsheet for the schools, another one is to compare award letters. If you go on the internet and you look at like award letter comparison tools, you will find a lot of these already created where they will just kind of, it's just, kind of a spreadsheet to help you put those items down so you can really make sure you're comparing the exact same thing. Because you don't want to compare one school that the cost of attendance, they've left out those additional expenses and transportation and so forth, especially if you're looking at going out of state, with a school that has included those, because it will not be accurate. So just, it's kind of like, we hate to tell you this, but you still have some homework to do to make sure you're making the right choices. Okay, what can I do if I get my financial aid offer, but it isn't enough because my situation has changed? I think this was covered in our presentation, but if somebody wants to go over that a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, I touched on it a little bit. We all know that life happens and situations happen. The FAFSA, when you're filling it out, it's based on income from 2 years prior. So as we all know in the world we're living in right now, things are very different right now. And luckily, our federal government has given the authority for financial aid offices at all the schools you may be interested in to use what's called professional judgment. And basically it's saying, okay, we're looking at a basic FAFSA, but let's look at that student's or that family's situation right now financially. And has it changed? And if it has, then we can make adjustments to the FAFSA information, we being the financial aid office. And that may result in you receiving additional grant money or other need-based type of money that would then either replace some of the non-need-based money, or you may not need to have it if you receive additional grants instead.
Just to add on to that, Brooke, I tell my students a lot of times to make friends with somebody at the financial aid office. And that sounds kind of funny, but it's true. You want somebody who's attending or working at that university. If you are heart set on going to University of Florida, but financially we're not quite there yet, call the financial aid office, make friends with someone there, let them know your situation, see if there's any other options that are available that may not have been originally presented, or if any new funding has become available. If they know how badly you want to go there and you're consistent in that communication, schools want to help you to get to their institution. So they'll be willing to work with you and hopefully find maybe some additional funding that wasn't originally there, or give you some options that may better assist your situation.
And I will tell you also, there are times that we have a cycle in financial aid of when things happen. However, occasionally we get thrown a little loop here, and it may be additional funding that comes in that wasn't initially available, and maybe it requires an extra application, or maybe it requires you to write a 200-word essay. That's a paragraph, but it might be worth it to you to get another little pot of money that initially was not offered. But if you are part of a circle of a financial aid officer that you've made friends with, they're going to remember you when they come up or come across any kinds of new pots of money that may apply to your situation. So that's an excellent suggestion too.
Great. Okay. My financial aid award letters look so different from each other. How do I even compare what they're offering?
I would say look at the key components that we went over in the PowerPoint. Things like the cost of attendance is the big one. Looking at your specific types of financial need that are being included in that letter. So are they looking at just grants, just loans? Is everything included? I think maybe highlighting or breaking out some of those key things from each different letter will help to compare them a little bit if they're formatted quite differently from each other.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. And again, like I said, you can also look on the internet, and there are some tools out there where they'll help you with that process where you can write things down to compare. So this was touched upon in our presentation, and we kind of have just now, can I negotiate my financial aid package? So I'm going to let everyone else talk, but I think it is something you can try, but it is not guaranteed. And you will find that there are some colleges that there are no negotiations. But you might find one that has additional options, and it might be, and, as Erin mentioned, that there becomes, so it's not necessarily negotiating, it's just that some other additional opportunities become available. It might be that they have offered money to students who now have decided not to attend that school, so it could come available that way, or it just could come from other options. So I think it's one of those things that if you really are concerned and you have a school you really want to go to, if you want to make sure they know that you're interested and looking for other opportunities, again, they might will remember you when those things come out. Anybody?
I think we've covered it, but I will say, make an appointment with the financial aid officer. I mean, sit down and talk to them. I will tell you, we all are bound by confidentiality, which means we're not going to share your personal situation with anybody. So be aware that a lot of times I hear all sorts of different kinds of stories and situations that a family may be in or a student may be in. And be aware that when you make an appointment with that financial aid counselor, you can talk to them in confidence about what your situation is, and that also may lead to other opportunities for you. Don't be hesitant to speak with them to disclose some of your information, because there might be not only the financial aid resources available, but they may know of other people or offices on campus that could assist you in any kind of transition that you may need to make into the university too, or college.
Will private scholarships from outside sources affect my financial aid package?
To my knowledge, no, because not your school that you're attending may not know of every private loan or private scholarship that you've been awarded. They're looking at the larger picture of federal funding that's been available, their own funding that they're offering to you from that institution. Private scholarships, maybe that you win from like the Rotary or something like that, that is, I think, can be calculated in when you're looking at cost of attendance, maybe how much money that you're going to have to pay out of pocket. If you know that you have some private loans or private scholarships, coming in that may help with that cost. But I don't believe that the institution's not going to know that information unless you've disclosed that to them. Am I correct on that info?
Yes, and I will say there are IRS implications, so you really are supposed to disclose any outside scholarships that you're receiving to the school. There is a calculation that it has impact on your taxes, which you just need to check with the financial aid office on how you need to report outside scholarships. It may be different for every school. Generally, it doesn't impact them unless there is a lot more scholarships coming in that are greater than the student's cost of attendance. So we have been talking about that estimated cost of attendance with all of the different components. Keep in mind that when financial aid offices across the nation create that cost of attendance, we inflate those numbers on purpose. So even if maybe you don't have a car, we still try to include transportation expenses because you may be taking the bus or you may be giving somebody money for gas money. But we inflate those cost of attendances on purpose so that it basically raises the cap on the total amount of aid we can give you, but it also makes room for those additional types of outside money. So if you have private scholarships coming in addition to the institution money, the state money, and the federal money, then we want to make sure that you can receive as much of all of that as you can. And then you can have the decision as to what types that you actually want to accept. But that's generally how we do look at it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Mm-hmm. If I want to study abroad for a year, can I still get financial aid? Will it be the same?
That's a great question. And it's a little tricky because this is really one of those it depends. So there are a lot of different kinds of study abroad programs. So there are some that are offered through the institution where you go to like their study abroad office and say, I want to go to Spain. And then, so it's a program that's offered through the school. But there are also programs that are offered through other schools. And I'll use the state of Florida as an example. So I have students that may do a program through University of Florida. It's still a state school. So if you have been offered Bright Futures, for example, you still could be eligible for that type of money because you're going to be studying abroad through another Florida institution. But if you pursue maybe a school in Tennessee, then that may not be applicable. So it's really, really crucially important to check with your school's financial aid office to go over your existing award package and say, okay, what types of money would I be eligible for should I decide to go on a study abroad? Because it may not be all of the types you've been offered, because there are certain restrictions as to what that money can be applied to. So the best answer I can give is check with the financial aid office at your school and ask them, okay, do I get this? Do I get this? Do I get this? And if you have any questions, make sure you understand the implications of where you're going to be doing your study abroad and what kinds of money you might receive.
Very, very good advice. What happens to the financial aid that is left over after my fees are paid? So if you have a balance, and typically this is going to be reimbursed to the student
Yeah.
in a form?
Yeah, the way I like to visualize it, and payments happen a little differently at all schools, but generally, to simplify it, think of your total amount of charges on your student account, whatever that may be. So it may include your tuition fees, it may include housing if you're living on campus, it may include a meal plan, for example. It may include some of your books. So you have charges that are on your student account. Well, compare that with the money that's coming in, all of the financial aid. Look at all of it. Look at all the scholarships, look at all the grants, and look at any of the gift aid that you're getting. And if that covers your charges, then I wouldn't even think about loans. But in some cases, you may need loans. So when you're doing that comparison, literally, how much you owe, compare it to how much you have coming in. If you have more coming in than owed, you'll get a refund. Now, that school may issue that through a paper check. They may issue it through a card. They may issue it through direct deposit. So that is, once again, a conversation that you need to have with either their bursar or their cashier's office or their money type of office, exchange office. But if you owe, then you would just make a decision. So if you owed a certain amount and you have less financial aid coming in, so you don't have enough to pay, that's where that gap funding comes in. And that's where you may need to turn to maybe some unsubsidized loans, or may need to turn to a plus loan for the parents to help you out, or seek a private loan, last case scenario.
And because I think we might have some parents watching tonight, just that it will go to the student.
It's their choice.
It's their choice.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's where I would, heed you with caution on getting that money back. I was a student that got money back from financial aid. I qualified for Bright Futures and some grant money, and I had a Florida prepaid account. So, at the end of this, or at the beginning of the semester, when costs were covered, I received funding back, and just spend it wisely is the best advice I can give you on that. As a 20-year-old college kid having, and again, everyone's gonna be different. It could be a little bit of money, it could be quite a chunk of money. So, I would just say be careful in how you spend it, use it wisely. I think we've talked about that before, your financial aid status may change year over year. So you may have a surplus of money in freshman year, but you may have a shortage of money in senior year, which I was that student. My Florida prepaid changed, was a 2 and 2, and I went to a 4-year university. So by senior year, we needed more money for school. So, it's nice to have the extra money come back to you, but I would look at the bigger picture on what is the best way for you to spend that money. And personally, I would put it towards your education versus maybe some of your personal lifestyle expenses that you would want to use that money for instead.
And I have a feeling the parents listening will agree.
Yes.
And I will say, I know of a lot of families that actually open up a separate savings account. So anytime the refund is issued, they actually just deposit it into that savings account.
that idea.
Then they start working through a budget, actual personal budget with the student, and say, okay, what are your expenses after everything's been paid? What else do you have for the rest of the semester? And what do you need to use that money for? So it is a good opportunity for the family to sit down and start talking realistically about that next step in that student's progression of becoming an adult, of learning how to balance a budget and learning how they may need that money in their senior year. So let's not go and spend it on a new car,
Right.
Be wise about that leftover funding and how you use it. Now, it is there to be used, so over the course of the semester, but be wise about it.
Right. I think we have time for one more question, and I think this is a good one. What happens with my financial aid if I withdraw from a class or classes? And I will let everyone else speak, but I will say I can tell you this is a really important thing that students need to be aware of. I think it depends on when you withdraw. And so you really want to check with your financial aid office to see if this is going to have an impact on your financial aid. For example, your Bright Futures scholarships, you sign up and say that, or when you get to renew your award, you have to maintain a certain GPA, and you also have to maintain a certain amount of hours. So if you say, I'm signing up this year as a full-time student, you have to maintain full-time hours by the end of the school year to maintain your award. So I think this is a really important thing that students are aware of, so you don't just start going, oh, I don't like this class, or it's too hard, and withdrawing, especially at a later time. Anyone want to add to that?
Yeah, I think, Brooke, you made a really good point. Drop add period during college is almost like a game, and it's a little bit of a gamble of, adjusting your schedule as needed. Maybe you like some classes, maybe you want to drop some classes. I think it's really important to know for your institution how many credit hours are required as a full-time student, how many credit hours are required as a part-time student, and the financial aid that you're being given, what are the contingencies on that funding, and more importantly, what is the contingencies on it renewing? And we had that conversation even with our dual enrollment students, understanding that when you're taking classes with St. Pete College in high school, you are taking college classes, and those college classes then turn into your funding eligibility for college level funding moving forward. So, I think it's, obviously we don't want you in a class if you're going to fail it, like that's not the best situation. But I, personally, I would do my best to stay in the classes. And if you are going to drop a class, I personally would have a conversation with your financial aid office before you make that final withdrawal. You need to be well informed of maybe some of the consequences or the fallout that's coming before you make that final decision.
Yeah, and I echo that. I also would say, check with your academic advisor, because anytime you withdraw from a class, there are both academic implications and potentially financial aid implications. Sometimes it's not the same thing. So you need to know kind of the rules of both. Generally, if academically things are not working out well and you're thinking about withdrawing from a class, you might also look to see if there might be some tutoring available or some way for you to successfully complete the class. Because any time that you withdraw, there is a long-term impact on your financial aid. I give an example. There's something that's called satisfactory academic progress. And this is a federal process that every school has to perform on every student, but it really impacts the ones who are just receiving financial aid. But what it looks at is 3 components. Their GPA, by the time they're juniors, so that really is not impactful for incoming freshmen. It looks at their PACE, which is basically a completion ratio comparing what you attempted for that semester versus what you completed. And then it looks at a maximum time frame, which coming into a university or college is really not going to be an issue as well. But the PACE is what I want to talk about, and just to kind of illustrate what we're talking about, say a student is taking 4 classes, 3 credit hours each, and that's a full-time schedule. And they're making A's in 2 of the classes, but they're not doing well in the other 2 classes. So what ends up happening is they say, I'm going to withdraw from those so I can maintain my 4.0 GPA. Well, from financial aid perspective, we're looking at that saying they only completed 50% of what they attempted. So this becomes could potentially become an issue in future terms, because the federal rule says you have to complete at least 67% of what you've attempted. So when a student habitually withdraws because they're trying to preserve their GPA, there are potentially some financial aid implications on that. So that's why we really urge you, before you ever consider withdrawing from a class, stop and talk to the financial aid office and find out, okay, here's what I'm registered for, here's the financial aid I've been offered. Will any of this be impacted currently? In other words, do I have to pay anything back currently? And then renewal for the following year. Is it going to impact me with withdrawing here this semester, next year when I redo the FAFSA and get offered aid? So you may miss out on future aid because you didn't complete what you attempted this semester.
Very good points. Okay, I think that is all the questions we're going to be able to take tonight. Thank you to Erin, Michelle, for your assistance, and I thank everyone that's tuned in. I hope you found this helpful. I know that you're going through this process. You will likely still have additional questions, and we do have, as I said earlier, our webpage, pcsb.org/FAFSA. So we'll pull that page up for you to see, but it's pcsb.org/FAFSA. And you will find on there a button that says make an appointment. So if you would like to make an appointment or ask a question, you can click that there, and that will get directed to us to help you with that. In addition, I do want to let you know of 2 additional financial aid events that are coming up. On April 7th, we will be offering this same presentation in Spanish. So April 7th at 7 p.m., tune in to facebook.com/PCSB Espanol. And we will also be showing a rebroadcast of this session on April 14th at 7 p.m. If you'd like to find out more about these events like this one, please subscribe to and follow our district social media platforms. And thank you so much for attending tonight.